あ、もう映ってますかね。It's fine today 大光です。ハリポタの続きをやります。ちょっとチャプター8の最初からやります。前回が短い動画だったんで。There look. Well, next to the tall kid with the red hair, wearing the glasses. Did you see his face? Did you see his scar? Whispers followed Harry from the moment he left his dormitory next day. People queuing outside classrooms stood on tiptoe to get a look at him, or doubled back to pass him in the corridors again, staring. Harry wished they wouldn't because he was trying to concentrate on finding his way to class. There were 140, two staircases at Hogwarts, wide, sweeping ones, narrow, leaky ones, some that led somewhere different on a Friday, some with a vanishing step halfway up that you had to remember to jump. Then there were doors that wouldn't open unless you asked politely, or ticked them in the right place, and doors that weren't really doors at all, but solid motors just pretending. It was also very hard to remember where anything was because it all seemed to move around a lot. The people in the portraits kept going to visit each other, and Harry was sure that coats of armor could walk. これ気のせいか音が小さい、音声が小さい気がするんだよな。マイク音声これでも最大だよな。じゃあ続けるか。The ghosts didn't help either. It was always a nasty shock when one of them glided suddenly through a door you were trying to open. Nearly headless Nick was always happy to point new Gryffindors in the right direction, but Peeves, the poltergeist, was worth to look doors and trick staircase if you met him when you were late for class. He would drop waste paper buckets on your head. Pull rugs from under your feet. Pelt you with bits of chalk, or sneak up behind you. Invisible grab your nose and screech. Got your conch. Even worse than Peeves, if that was possible, was the caretaker, August Filch. Harry and Ron managed to get on the wrong side of him on the very first morning. Filch found them trying to force their way through a door which unluckily turned out to be the entrance to the out-of-bounds corridor on the third floor. He wouldn't believe they were lost, was sure they were trying to break into it on purpose, and was threatening to look them in the dungeons when they were rescued by Professor Quirrell, who was passing. Filch owned a cat called Mrs. Norris, a, scary, dust colored creature, with bulging, lamp-like eyes just like Filch's. She patrolled the corridors all alone. Baker ruled in front of her, put just one toe out of line, and she'd risk off for Filch. Should appear, whizzing. 2 seconds later, Filch knew the secret passageways of the school better than anyone. Except perhaps the Weasley twins. And could pop up as suddenly as any of the ghosts. The students all hated him, and it was the dearest ambition of many to give Mrs. Norris a good kick. Avatar ちょっとアバターのやり直します。はい、どこまで読んだっけ。And then, once you had managed to find them, there were the lessons themselves. There was a lot more to magic, as Harry quickly found out, than waving your wand and saying a few funny words. They had to study the night skies through their telescopes every Wednesday at midnight and learn the names of different stars and movements of the planets. 3 times a week they went out to the greenhouses behind the castle to study herbology with a damp little witch called Professor Sprout, where they learned how to take care of all the strange plants and fungi and find out what they were used for. Easily the most boring lesson was history of magic, which was the only class taught by a ghost. Professor Beans had been very old indeed, indeed when he had fallen asleep in front of the staff room fire and got up next morning to teach, leaving his body behind him. Beans droned on and on while they scribbled down names and dates and got Emmerich the Evil and Ulrich the Oddball mixed up. Professor Friedrich, the charms teacher, was a tiny little wizard who had to stand on a pile of books to see over his desk. At the start of the first lesson, he took the register, and when he reached Harry's name, he gave an excited squeak and toppled out of sight. Professor McGonagall was again different. Harry had been quite right to think she wasn't a teacher to cross. Strict and clever, she gave them a taking to the moment they had sat down in her first class. Transfiguration is some of the most complex and dangerous magic you will learn at Hogwarts, she said. Anyone messing around in my class will leave and not come back. You have been warned. Then she changed her desk into a pig and back again. They were all very impressed and couldn't wait to get started. But soon realized they weren't going to be changing the furniture into animals for a long time. After making a lot of complicated notes, they were each given a match and started trying to turn it into a needle. By the end of the lesson, only Hermione Granger had made any difference to her match. Professor McGonagall showed the class how it had gone all silver and pointy and gave Hermione a rare smile. The class everyone had really been looking forward to was Defense Against the Dark Arts, but Quirrell's lessons turned out to be a bit of a joke. His classroom smelled strongly of garlic, which everyone said was the word of a vampire he'd met in Romania and was afraid would be coming back to get him one of 3 days. His turban, he told them, had been given to him by an African prince as 視聴者いらっしゃるんですね。ありがとうございます。こんな拙い英語ですがよろしくお願いします。監視してください。目標はトイック満点 VTuber です。African Prince as a thank you for getting rid of a troublesome zombie. But they weren't sure they believed this story. For one thing, when Seamus Finnegan asked urgently to hear how Quirrell had fought off the zombie, Quirrell went pink and started thinking about the weather. For another, They had noticed that a funny smell hung around the tavern, and the Weasley twins insisted that it was stuffed full of garlic as well, so that Quirrell was protected wherever he went. Harry, Harry was very relieved to find out that he wasn't miles behind everyone else. Lots of people had come from Muggle families and like him, hadn't had any idea that they were witches and wizards. There was so much to learn that even people like Ron didn't have much of a head start. Friday was an important day for Harry and Ron. They finally managed to find their way down to the Great Hall for breakfast without getting lost once. What have we got today? Harry asked Ron as he poured sugar on his porridge. Double potions with the Slytherins, said Ron. Snape's head of Slytherin house. They say he always favors them. We'll be able to see if it's true. Wish McGonagall favored us, said Harry. Professor McGonagall was the head of Gryffindor house, but it hadn't stopped her giving them a huge pile of homework the day before. Just then, the post arrived. Harry had got used to this boy by now, but it had given him a bit of a shock on the first morning, when about 100 owls had suddenly streamed into the great hall during breakfast. Circling the tables until they saw their owners and dropping letters and packages onto their laps. Hedwig hadn't brought Harry anything so far. She sometimes flew in to nibble his ear and have a bit of toast before going off to sleep in the orrery with the other school owls. This morning, however, she fluttered down between the marmalade and the sugar bowl, and the bread dropped a note onto Harry's plate. Harry tore it open at once. Dear Harry, it said in a very untidy scroll. I know you get Friday afternoons off, so would you like to come and have a cup of tea with me around 3? I want to hear all about you. our material first week. Send us a answer back with Hedwig. Hagrid. Harry borrowed Ron's quill. Scribbled, yes, please. Scribbled, yes, please. See you later. On the back of the note and sent Hedwig off again. It was lucky that Harry had tea with Hagrid to look forward to, because the potions lesson turned out to be the worst thing and had happened to him so far. At the start of the term banquet, Harry had got the idea that Professor Snape disliked him. By the end of the first potions lesson, he knew he'd been wrong. Snape didn't dislike Harry, he hated him. Potions lessons took place down in one of the dungeons. It was colder here than up in the main castle, and would have been quite creepy enough without the pickled animals floating in glass jars all around the walls. 大根の髪型は本当にこれに近づいてきてる。長さも波も染めようかと思ったんだけど、顔に傷ができちゃったんでね、針みたいにちょっと痛くて染められないんだよな。Potions lesson. Snape, like Flitwick, started the class by taking the register, and like Flitwick, he paused at Harry's name. "Ah, yes," he said softly. "Harry Potter, one new celebrity. Draco Malfoy and his friends Crabbe and Goyle sniggered behind their hands." Snape finished calling the names and looked up at the class. His eyes were black like Hagrid's, but they had none of Hagrid's warmth. They were cold and empty and made you think of dark tunnels. "You are here to learn the subtle science and exact art of potion making," he began. He spoke in barely more than a whisper, but they caught every word. Like Professor McGonagall, Snape had the gift of keeping a class silent without effort. As there is little foolish word waving here, many of you will hardly believe this magic. I don't expect you will really understand the beauty of the softly shimmering cauldron with its shimmering fumes. 知らない単語が引き出しに出てくる。Film. The delicate power of liquid that creep through human veins, bewitching the mind, and ensnaring the senses. I can teach you how to bottle fame, brew glory, even stop at death, if you aren't as a big bunch of dunderheads as I usually have to teach. More silence followed. Followed this little speech. Harry and Ron exchanged looks with raised eyebrows. Hermione Granger was on the edge of her seat and looked desperate to start proving that she wasn't a dunderhead. Potter, said Snape suddenly, what would I get if what would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood? Powdered root of what to add infusions of what? Harry glanced at Ron, who looked as stumped as he was. Hermione's hand had shot into the air. I don't know, sir, said Harry. Snape's lips curled into a sneer. Chit. Fame clearly isn't everything. He ignored Hermione's hand. Let's try again, Potter. Where would you look if I told you to find me a bezoar? Hermione stretched her hand as high into the air as it would go without her leaving her seat. But Harry didn't have the faintest idea what a bizarre was. Bizarre was. He tried not to look at Malfoy, Crabbe and Goyle, who were shaking with laughter. I don't know, sir. Thought you wouldn't open a book before coming, Potter. Harry forced himself to keep looking straight into those cold eyes. He had looked through his books at the Dursleys, but did Snape expect him to remember everything in 1,000 magical herbs and fungi? Snape was still ignoring Hermione's quivering hand. What is the difference, Potter, between monkshoot and wolfsbane? At this, Hermione stood up, her hand stretching towards the dungeon ceiling. I don't know, said Harry quietly. I think Hermione does. So why don't you try her? A few people laughed. Harry caught Seamus's eye and Seamus winked Snape. However, was not pleased. Sit down, he snapped at Hermione. For your information, Potter, asphodel and wormwood make a sleeping potion so powerful it is known as the drought of living death. A bezoar is a stone taken from the stomach of a goat and it will save you from most potions. Bezoar か。どこまでなんだっけ。A bezoar is a stone taken from the stomach of a goat and it will save you from most poisons. As for monkshoot and wolfsbane, they are the same plant, which also goes by the name of aconite. Well, why aren't you all copying that down? There was a sudden rumbling for quills and parchment. Over the noise, Snape said, and a point will be taken from Gryffindor house for your check, Potter. Things didn't improve for the Gryffindors as the potions lesson continued. Snape put them all into pairs and set them to mixing up a simple potion to cure birds. He swept around in his long black cloak, watching them weigh dried nettles and crush snake fangs, criticizing almost everyone except Malfoy, whom he seemed to like. He was just telling everyone to look at the perfect way Malfoy had stewed his haunt slugs when clouds of acid green smoke and a loud hissing filled the dungeon. Neville had somehow managed to melt Sham's cauldron into a twisted blob, and their potion was sweeping across the stone floor, burning holes in people's shoes. Within seconds, the whole class were standing on their stools while Neville, who had been drenched in the potion when the cauldron collapsed, moaned in pain as angry red birds sprang up all over his arms and legs. Idiot boy, snarled Snape, cleaning the spilled potion away with one wave of his wand. I suppose you added the porcupine quills before taking the cauldron off the fire? Neville whimpered as balls started to pop up all over his nose. Take him to the hospital wing. Snape spat at Sims. Then he landed on Harry and Ron, who had been walking next to Neville. You, Potter, why didn't you tell him not to add the quills? Thought he'd make you look good if he got it wrong, did you? That's another point you've lost for Gryffindor. This was so unfair that Harry opened his mouth to argue, but Ron kicked him behind the cauldron. Don't push it, he muttered. I've heard Snape can turn very nasty. They climbed the steps out of the dungeon an hour later. Harry's mind was racing and his spirits were low. He'd lost 2 points for Gryffindor in his very first week. Why did Snape hate him so much? Cheer up, said Ron. Snape's always taking points off Fred and George. Can I come and meet Hagrid with you? At 5 to 3 they left the castle and made their way across the grounds. Hagrid lived in a small wooden house on the edge of the forbidden forest. A crossbow and a pair of galoshes were outside the front door. When Harry knocked, they had a frantic scrabbling from inside and several booming barks. Then Harry's voice rang out, saying, "Back, Frank, back!" Hagrid's big hairy face appeared in the crack as he pulled the door open. "Hang on," he said. "Back, Frank." He let them in, struggling to keep a hold on the collar of an enormous black boarhound. There was only one room inside. Hermes and pheasants were hanging from the ceiling. A copper kettle was boiling on the open fire, and in a corner stood a massive bed with a patchwork quilt over it. "Make yourselves at home," said Hagrid, letting go of Frank, who bounded straight at Ron and started licking his ears. Like Hagrid, Frank was clearly not as fierce as he looked. "This is Ron," Harry told Hagrid, who was pouring boiling water into a large teapot and putting rock cakes onto a plate. "Another Weasley, said Hagrid, glancing at Ron's freckles. "I spent half my life chasing your twin brothers away from the forest." The rock cakes almost broke the teeth. But Harry and Ron pretended to be enjoying them as they told Hagrid. All about their first lessons. Frank rested his head on Harry's knee and drooled all over his robes. Harry and Ron were delighted to hear Hagrid call Filch that old git. As for the cat, Mrs. Norris, I'd like to introduce her to Frank sometime. Dear no. Every time I go up to the school, she follows me everywhere. Can't get rid of her. Filch puts her up to it. Harry told Hagrid about Snape's lesson. Hagrid, like Ron, told Harry not to worry about it. That Snape liked hardly any of the students, but he seemed to really hate me. "Rubbish," said Hagrid. "Why should he?" Yet Harry couldn't help thinking that Hagrid didn't quite meet his eyes when he said that. How's your brother Charlie? Hagrid asked Ron. I liked him a lot. Great with animals. Harry wondered if Hagrid had changed the subject on purpose, while Ron told Hagrid all about Charlie's work with dragons. Harry picked up a piece of paper that was lying on the table under the tea cozy. It was a cutting from the Daily Prophet. Gringotts break in latest. Investigations continue into the blocking of Gringotts on 31 July. Widely believed to be the work of dark wizards or witches unknown. Gringotts goblins today insisted that nothing had been taken. The vault that was searched had in fact been emptied the same day. But we are not telling you what was in there. So keep your noses out if you know what's good for you, said the Gringotts spokesgoblin this afternoon. Harry remembered Ron telling him on the train that someone had tried to rob Gringotts. But Ron hadn't mentioned the date. Hagrid, said Harry, that Gringotts breaking happened on my birthday. It might have been happening while we were there. There was no doubt about it. Hagrid definitely didn't meet Harry's eyes this time. He grunted and offered him another log cake. Harry read the story again. The vault that was searched had but in fact been emptied earlier that H と B の区別がつかない。That same day. H と B の区別が。Hagrid had emptied Vault 713. If you could call it emptying. Taking out that grubby little package. Had that been what the thieves were looking for? As Harry and Ron walked back to the castle for dinner, their pockets weighed down with log cakes they'd been too polite to refuse. Harry thought that none of the lessons he had so far had given him as much to think about as tea with Hagrid. Had Hagrid collected that package just in time? Where was it now? And did Hagrid know something about Snape that he didn't want to tell Harry? はい、チャプター8終わりました。ふぅ。 もうちょっとやりましょう。チャプター9やるけどな。約20ページ。Harry had never believed he would meet a boy he hated more than Dudley. But that was before he met Draco Malfoy. Still, first year Gryffindors only had potions with the Slytherins. No, they didn't have to put up with Malfoy much, or at least they didn't until they spotted a notice pinned up in the Gryffindor common room which made them all go grown. Flying lessons would be starting on Thursday, and Gryffindor and Slytherin would be running together. Typical, said Harry darkly. Just what I always wanted to make a fool of myself on a broomstick in front of Malfoy. He had been looking forward to learning to fly more than anything else. You don't know you'll make a fool of yourself, said Ron disably. Anyway, I know Malfoy's always going on about how good he is at Quidditch, but I bet that's all talk. Malfoy certainly did talk about flying a lot. He complained loudly about first years never getting in the house Quidditch terms and told wrongs. Boostful stories which always seemed to end with him narrowly escaping muggles in helicopters. He wasn't the only one, though. The way Seamus Finnegan told it. He'd spent most of his childhood zooming around the countryside on his broomstick. Even Ron would tell anyone who'd listen about the time he'd almost hit a hangilda on Charlie's old broom. Everyone from wizarding families talked about Quidditch constantly. Ron had already had a big argument with Dean Thomas, who shared their dormitory, about football. Ron couldn't see what was exciting about a game with only one ball where no one was allowed to fly. Harry had caught Ron prodding Dean's poster of West Ham football team, trying to make the player's name. The player's move. Neville had never been on a broomstick in his life, because his grandmother had never left him near one. Privately, Harry felt Sid had good reason, because Neville managed to have an extraordinary number of accidents even with both feet on the ground. Hermione Granger was almost as nervous about flying as Neville was. This was something you couldn't learn by heart out of a book. Not that she hadn't tried. At breakfast on Thursday, she bored them all stupid with flying tapes she'd got out of a library book called Quidditch through the ages. Neville was hanging on to her every word, desperate for anything that might help him hang on to his broomstick later. But everybody else was very pleased when Hermione's lecture was interrupted by the arrival of the post. あ、かゆい。あ、ちょうどページがいいところで途切れたんで、今日はここまでにします。視聴してくださった1名の方、本当にありがとうございました。これから視聴してくださる皆さんも本当にありがとうございます。では、サリュー。